I'm Jake Williams, StatesCoop's Associate Publisher. We are here with Mike Daniels, Vice President of Global Public Sector at Google Cloud. Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Jake, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So Mike, it's certainly an unprecedented time in the state and local government arena. What top priorities are you seeing among your customers across the SLED market, and what are some notable projects other public sector agencies should be watching?
Yeah, and I think, at the outset, and you mentioned unprecedented. I mean, like, it's a word that's been overused, I feel like, over the past several years, but certainly applicable here. I mean, with the pandemic driving what amounts to and collapsing rapid digitization and modernization into these supremely compressed time periods where we're having to deal with our customers and ourselves in collaboration with them. We're dealing with everything from workforce productivity, how do you do collaboration, how do you maintain your internal focus, as well as providing real-time data and information to citizens at scale that has really never been encountered prior to this. To how do we preserve the social safety net that we all count on to preserve America during times of crisis, and then do all of this with, uncertain budgets, certainly budgets that are down, and a lot of unplanned expenses. So it's been an interesting climate for our customers. Some of the areas that I would say that kind of call out that I'm familiar with and we've been involved with is in the state of Illinois, using our virtual agents to really talk at scale and interact at scale with citizens across the state that would normally have had to run through a call center, and streamlining that entire process. To our customer at Oklahoma State Department of Health, where from the early days of the pandemic, we've been involved with tracking disease progression, communications with citizens at large and staff, along with positioning, supplies, et cetera, those sorts of things, to really the epicenter of this event, which was New York itself, with rapidly engaging and driving a complete unemployment insurance, not only on-ramping, but internally to process that at just like unparalleled scale. And so making those kinds of impacts in literally days, not weeks, being joined at the hip with our customers to drive outcomes that really matter to, frankly, citizens in America at large. I mean, that's been the rewarding part of this, but it has been truly an unprecedented time as part of that.
We are both in agreement that the word unprecedented is so overused, but so true at this moment, right? Nothing like this really has ever happened in the state and local government technology sector as we know it. With all of this at play, how should public sector agencies be planning for 2021, kind of while still in the midst of responding to and recovering from this pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of empathy for our customers in this space. As I mentioned, I mean, as we are sort of beginning to look up from the kind of fog of battle, and that's literally what it was in the early days of this thing, now you're facing into very uncertain, at least near-term, fiscal future, and how do we balance all of that? But I would say, like, and it looks like this is going to be around a little bit longer than maybe we all thought it was going to be, which I think also casts and has some implications for where we have to drive to. But I do think it's about seizing the opportunity to reset your cost to serve, your long-term cost to serve, in some of these core programs that everyone counts on in their daily lives. But at the same time, driving flexibility and agility into it. If nothing else, we've learned that those things truly, truly matter. And when you live through something like this, and I think there's a lot of permanence that's going to be around how people want to engage and how our employees want to work to deliver that engagement that really spans both internal as well as external. So those are the things that I think that I would be thinking about it in their shoes. How do I use scarce dollars to truly reset my long-term cost to serve, and how do I think about it holistically?
So you touched on this a little bit in that answer, but I want to, we talked about what's happening right now. We talked about what's happening next year, but I want to talk more broadly about how these after effects of the pandemic are going to change the way public sector, approaches things going forward. I mean, really, how do those impacts that we've seen really change the way the public sector is going to look at modernization and digital transformation in the future?
Yeah, and I think kind of, at least from my perspective, digital transformation was like big emphasis on the digital part of that, not so much emphasis on the transformation part of that, historically, right? And not completely, but that tended to be the focus. I think that focus shifts really to the transformation side of the equation, and that becomes the really important part of this. It becomes about not just putting something online, but changing the way we deliver services truly. And it requires a rethinking of where there's rigidity and inflexibility in that entire process. And that means thinking about a digital strategy that spans both internal as well as external. I've seen a lot of digital strategies where it's really about just the engagement piece of this thing versus about how do we deliver it with our own folks and our own internal systems and engage in a different way. I think there's a level of permanence that's going to be affected with this. I think that the only bright spot out of this is that the focus is going to be driven there, which I think is long-term beneficial and cost effective for our governments, and I think frankly beneficial for the citizens.
So Mike, to kind of wrap this up here, around this time every year we start looking ahead, not just to the year that's coming up, but to the future. We talk about emerging technology, we talk about all of these things that are on the horizon. Obviously that takes a different tone this year, but what technologies, what priorities do you really see on the horizon for state and local governments going forward? And what are some of those concrete steps that they need to take right now to be ready to embrace them?
Yeah, and I mentioned the complexity of the environment they're living within, but for me, I mean, it kind of starts with this premise. If you buy into that it's about transformation digitally, and emphasis on the transformation, that means you need a partner with an innovation mindset. That means that you start there, like you kind of start there versus the technology. You start with someone that's invested in driving your outcomes, in that way. And then that starts to lead into technologies. And what types of technologies does it lead into? It leads into applied AI. And applied AI underlies a number of the projects that I mentioned to you earlier in this project. How do we apply that to get scale? Those sorts of things, and to frankly better serve. The second thing it leads to, I think, is open. Like how, you want to have open technology, multi-cloud, a diversity of employee skill bases that can contribute to that. Low code, no code. How do we do this at speed? We've seen everything that we've been involved with where speed is paramount in the delivery. I don't think that changes. I think that's extraordinarily important when you think about it. And I think really, though, at the end of the day, it's about like, where do you go to drive innovation, which underlies transformation, and versus just simply operating something, And so, to me, that's the kind of the big shift that I think is driving forward with this. And I think the technologies that underlie that are some of them that I said, but also having a complete bag to bring those sorts of things as a true vested partner to our customers. So.
Well, all good stuff, Mike, and it's certainly going to be an interesting couple of years ahead for the state and local government community. So thanks for being here. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, it's been a great privilege to serve state and local. That is literally the tip of the spear where citizen services are delivered for the vast majority of Americans, and it's a great honor every day to serve the market. Thank you.